Alright, this video is for colorists looking to make their videos look more natural. We're going to be talking about memory colors, the definition of memory colors, the findings of their research, and how we can apply that to our color grading. And then at the end of the video, we'll compare and contrast a couple shots and see how we like it. So memory colors refers to the phenomenon of us having a different memory of how things look than they actually are in real life. So for instance, if we think about how something like a blue sky should look, in our heads we remember it differently than it actually is in real life. Or at least we prefer things on screen to look at how we remember them as opposed to how they actually look in real life, which I feel like should come as no surprise. I learned this from the Color Correction Handbook 2nd edition by Alexis van Hurkman, and when I read this particular chapter, I just thought it was really interesting, so that's why we're covering it today. The stuff we're going to talk about today comes specifically from Chapter 8, Memory Colors, Skin Tones, Skies, and Foliage, which clues us into things as human beings that we lock into memory the most: skin tones, skies, and foliage. The utility in knowing these things means you can keep things looking really naturalistic when you want, and when, after knowing the rules, break them in creative ways if you so choose. The research on memory colors has been done for over 70 years now. C.J. Bartleson of the Eastman Kodak Company presented some early data in the Journal of Optical Society of America in January of 1960 and defined memory colors as, quote, those colors that are recalled in association with familiar objects. Alexis van Hurkman, author of the Color Correction Handbook, says, quote, these results strongly indicate that we all have shared expectations of what certain commonly experienced colors should look like. The expectations aren't absolutely identical, but they're close enough to be statistically significant, and the deviations make sense given the natural subject variation and differences in illumination. I'll put up a table of their findings here. Common memory colors and where their metrics fall in the CIE color space, one of the first mathematically developed color spaces based on human vision. More interestingly, and more applicable to us maybe, I'll put up these values mapped onto a vector scope. So this is what Alexis van Hurkman commonly does, and I've stolen it. I'll color correct the footage even with secondaries or keys or nowadays tools like Mononodes, and make sure the memory colors are accurate before I even show it to the client. Obviously, it depends on the project and whether it's supposed to look natural in the first place or not. It also depends on situational things like what lights the scene, stuff like that. But these are more guidelines than rules anyways. And interestingly, skin is the most accurately remembered color to how it appears in real life. In other words, it's almost the same in memory as it is in real life. Another paper called Investigation of Human Color Memory presents a succinct overview of the results. So here are some findings on how things are generally remembered. We can use it to shift hue, luminance, and saturation of these objects to result in more pleasing images. It is stated that in all cases except brick, lightness of memory colors ran higher on average. Brick is redder and darker. Sand has more purity, or saturation, with more yellow. Caucasian skin, more yellow. Grass and deciduous trees, more blue-green than yellow-green. And blue sky is more cyan and of higher purity, or saturation. Another thing noted in the book is that pleasing color rendition is more important than strict accuracy when it comes to viewer preference. It has also been found, generally speaking, that red and violet blues were most preferred with either high saturation and medium lightness, or medium saturation and high lightness, but not both. Yellows, including yellow-red and yellow-green, were most preferred with both high saturation and high lightness. Greens and blues were most preferred with medium to high lightness, but at medium saturation. Purples were most preferred in a restricted range of medium saturation and medium lightness. What that means for us is we might not even have to adjust the hue of a lot of stuff, we might just have to adjust its saturation and brightness. The scientists who created film stocks spent many years trying to perfect these things, and now that we're working with digital sensors that capture light in a different way, it's up to us to carry on this legacy. There's also minor cross-cultural differences in color preference. So for instance, Japanese subjects preferred a lighter image compared to other groups. Chinese subjects preferred more contrast compared to the American and Japanese groups. Subjects from the Eastern Hemisphere preferred higher saturation than the American group. Japanese subjects preferred warmer images than the American group. Chinese subjects preferred cooler images than the American group. Certain colors carry different associative meanings across various cultures, which is a separate issue from color preference. So if you're working on a cross-cultural program of some kind meant to be distributed to a specific part of the world, it may be a good idea to do a bit of regional art history research before you go into the session. Last thing I'll say on this is it all comes with a caveat that you need to be aware of what's lighting your scene. So if it's a warm sunset, things are going to be different than if you're at like a bright blue midday scene. And again, this whole color memory thing is just something to be aware of. It's by no means a rule. Alright, so I've pulled up a couple shots and we're going to do a quick grade and then look at the before and after. All right, so here we are in DaVinci Resolve. I just picked out a few shots to take a look at. And if you want, feel free to pause on any of these to get a better look. So here's this shot. I just did a really basic slight correction first. And so what I've done on these shots is I haven't really touched like contrast or graded the shots any differently. I've literally just used Mononodes to change the hue, saturation, and luminance of specific colors. There are free tools in DaVinci Resolve that you can use to do this too. For instance, in the curves over here, you can go to hue versus hue, hue versus sat, hue versus luminance. They also have this new tool, the color slice, in which you can do a lot of these things as well. I just really happen to like the Mononodes tool. So here's a shot of a girl sitting on a beach, and here's the shot after the correction. So what did we do? We pushed a little more yellow into the skin, we pushed more yellow into the sand and saturated it a little more. And then we put the sky more towards cyan and saturated it a little more as well. And then with her shirt here, I know it kind of looks more pink probably, but it's technically in red. And since reds and violet blues were most preferred with either high saturation and medium lightness or medium saturation and high lightness, but not both, this shirt is not very light. So we could afford to pump a little more saturation into it while still keeping it looking natural. On to the next shot here. Basically, we did the same things. We turned the blues a little more towards cyan. Brick, as we learned, is usually preferred a little more red and dark, so that's what we did. And then this girl's yellow shirt here. Since yellows, including yellow red and yellow green, were most preferred with both high saturation and high lightness, the shirt is pretty bright, so we pumped some more saturation into the shirt as well. So before, after. Mind you, I just did like a really quick job on these just to demonstrate, you know. And then lastly, with this outdoor scene, same thing. This is before, already looking pretty good. And this is after. So what did we do? Brick a little more dark and red, push some blues more towards cyan. So before, after. And then the grass, since grass and deciduous trees are generally more blue-green than yellow-green, we shifted the hue of the grass a little more towards blue. And even though the grass looks green, it technically resides in the yellow part of our vector scopes here. So you can see if I run the qualifier over, it's almost pointing at yellow more than it is with green, right? And yellows, including yellow red and yellow green, were most preferred with both high saturation and high lightness. So along with shifting the hue, we also pumped a little more saturation in there. And I just realized we could afford to brighten it up a bit if we wanted, so I also just brightened it up a bit. So before, after. And mind you, this is without doing a full color grade with like a balance and a contrast and exposure adjustments and all that kind of stuff. This is just a quick adjustment to hue, saturation, and luminances of specific colors. And there it is. Let me know if you found this interesting or helpful. If you want any specific topics covered, let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time.